First of all, thank you so much, everyone, for coming. This process started November of last year when Lindsay and myself had a chat about things to do. I just joined IPONWEB, having spent most of my career at WPP and with agencies and working on the technology side of the business. And personally, and I think from an industry point of view, finding out about how technology has shaped and changed our industry was something that I was fascinated on. And with ExchangeWire, obviously, we've been in this game for quite a long time and helped to affect the change and to educate many of us with the ATS events. This was really something that we wanted to find out. And hopefully most of you had a chance to at least scan or to have a look at the results of the survey, but we'll go through it in a little bit more detail later. And then we'll have a panel of some people who are actually doing this on a day-to-day basis. Some clients that we're working with, some people that we know very well. And yeah, let's hope this is going to be a good and informative afternoon. From the conversations we've had in the build-up to this, there's going to be a lot of very lively discussion. So I've gone to them, sorry. I sat on the remote control, so I kind of took the wrong way. OK, so IPONWEB. Most of you would know IPONWEB. We are the company that most people haven't heard of in this industry. We've got a very proud history of building, first of all, Right Media was one of the businesses that we built at the very, very beginning. And then all the way through, kind of been the people in the background who were building the technology for other companies. A company would go out there, they'd raise millions in Silicon Valley for a great concept that they had, and then they'd come to us to actually make it a reality. So this has been very much the way that we've worked. We like to support other companies and make them successful, and we hope to continue to do so. Pioneers in programmatic, real-time bidding, and machine learning, probably in that order. So starting off programmatic and RTB. Machine learning is really starting to become a reality now, and some of the things that we're doing, some of the areas that we're working in, we've got some very exciting things happening in this area that we'll be looking to share over the coming months. And then if we look at the evolution of ad tech, we look back to 2005, which was still 10 years after new media, if anyone remembers the term new media, so it all kind of started off. 10 years later, we started coming up with ad exchanges, and that's when technology really started to impact. Before we had exchanges and real-time bidding, it was just trading media, and it was all very kludgy and very clunky. So the real technology started back in 2005. And as you can see, ad networks started to become demand-side platforms. Digital agencies started setting up trading desks. I was part of the team that was involved in the Media Innovation Group, which became Xaxis. And all agency groups realized how important technology was and started to focus in on that. So that was a big step. And then into performance marketing and so on. So nothing new here that you don't know about already, but the triangles kind of show the scale of what we're doing. Last year in the US, for the first time, digital pastime TV for ad spend, which was something that took a long time, but doesn't look like it's going to reverse or go back on. And as we all know, the more media is shifting to digital, and digital is shifting to programmatic. And when we say programmatic, we don't just mean real-time bidding. We mean the automation of the process. There's not that many agencies out there who are still using insertion orders and then faxing them over. I think if you give some of your team a fax machine, they would wonder what it is and be pushing buttons and trying to figure out what was going on. So those days are gone, and now automation and programmatic is with us. So now it's a case of how do we actually understand this when you've got people at the most senior level who perhaps don't have the greatest understanding of technology, and then people coming up who are computer scientists and chemical engineers and people with very strange backgrounds who are actually coming along and doing the work for us. Disruption in the ecosystem, again, this is nothing new to you guys here. We have a lot of things that are happening that are just turning things on its head. We thought that the first 10 years was the change and things would settle down. If anything, things are speeding up. The rate of change is going even faster. And there's new contenders. Who would have thought that Accenture and McKinsey and these guys would be actually getting involved in doing some work? You know, normally they talk about stuff. They tell everyone what to do, and then they pass it on to somebody else to actually activate. Now they've got their digital teams. Now they're actually getting involved in media buying, which is an interesting step. We still have to see how that plays out. It's not really along the lines of what they do, but they see the opportunity. And they spent collectively, these guys have spent 1.2 billion on acquiring companies. So they're taking it seriously. They see this as the future of what they're doing. And it's transforming how brands work with their agency partners. The last 15 years have seen a real shift. My first job was in Mediacom, and client was king. And the relationship between the client, advertiser, and the agency was very, very close. There was a lot of sharing going on. Then we had the crash of 2008, and it was pitch, and then it was repitch, and it was repitched, all very much based on getting the cost down further, further, and further. And with programmatic, it kind of broke apart a little bit the relationship between agencies and the publishers. And so now we're in a situation where sometimes agency people can be seen as vendors that can be just easily swapped in and out. And that's something that I think as an industry we need to address. And hopefully the discussion today will help to look at this in a bit more detail. So where are we today? In-housing is something that seems to be gathering pace quite a lot. Again, we'll see how that goes. I think a lot of the advertisers that are out there think, well, we're doing our advertising ourselves, we're doing our SEO ourselves, RTB is kind of the same and programmatic is kind of the same. The reality, I think, will hit them quite hard in how difficult this is, but also how, if you're just doing your own programmatic trading, how are you learning new things? How are you figuring out what the next thing coming in is? If you work with an agency, you're working with so many different clients, you can get that kind of information back. Commoditization of inventory and relationships, digital cuts where P&G, Unilever, these kind of guys are starting to see what happens if they reduce spend in certain areas and not seeing huge differences. So there's so much happening that we're in a very interesting time. And then what are the imperatives for today's agencies? How do you differentiate with technology? If all agencies are using the trading desk, how do you go into a pitch and say, this is why we are so different from everybody else? And we believe at IPONWEB, because this is what we do, that technology can help to be that differentiator. Transparency is something that's been coming up in the last year particularly. It's always been there, but even more so now with some of the stories that have been coming out. And getting closer to supply partners. This was one of the things that came out for me in the research was the publishers became just an inventory source. And that connection between the publisher and the agency was starting to drift apart. And when you use your own technology, you can get those relationships back. And that's something that I think is that we can look at very closely. And then driving real business outcomes. It's not, you know this, it's not all about clicks. Clicks are a metric, it's easy to understand, everyone can kind of get behind it, but it's not going to be what's going to then lead to the sale. So we can, and we will be a lot better at driving real business outcomes. So again, thank you so much for coming. Sorry for the little sales pitch there, but going to do it and enjoy the panel. Thank you.
Hello. Before you can get to the panel, you've got to go through a data presentation, I'm afraid, from me. I'm Hugh Williams. I'm a senior data analyst at ExchangeWire, and I'm just going to give you a little bit of a look at what the research was about, what we hope to discover, and a little bit of fodder for the people on the panel a bit later. So we undertook the research, and it was research across APAC, North America, and EMEA. And it was agencies across all three. And I think some of the things we were looking to discover was whether ownership of your programmatic buying technology can help agencies survive in the ecosystem, what agencies' top priorities are over the coming months, how agencies are looking to differentiate because the ecosystem is becoming more and more crowded, how technologies change the demands clients are placing on their agencies, and how does owning your technology impact the relationships that you're having with your clients and your partners. And I think the first thing that we really noticed was that tech ownership is actually quite high. So 49% of people said that agencies said that they own and operate their own technology. And that while this might not mean they own and operate their technology top to bottom, all their own, it is an indicator that there is a move towards this trend. And something that we picked up on and suggested in the report was that this might be because the agencies are identifying areas where perhaps third parties are less advanced and they're thinking we can make gains here, so they're picking up on it and developing their own technology. And if you look here as well, you can see there's a bit of a difference between the regions that we studied. So EMEA and North America are a bit more advanced in terms of using their own technology than APAC. That's probably going to be something that changes over the next few years, because EMEA and North America are generally quicker adopters, but APAC will pick up, I think we can be sure of that. So, I mean, why are agencies using their own technology? There's got to be a reason, otherwise they wouldn't do it. What are the benefits? And I think, as Brian alluded to just now, actually, one of the main reasons, one of the main benefits is close relationships that they're developing with their publisher partners. So I can't actually see it from here, but I think it says 63% of agencies who are using their own programmatic buying technology said that programmatic technology has majorly improved their ability to build relationships with publishers. And if you look at those who aren't using their own technology, there's a massive drop off to 33% saying that they can make that programmatic technology has majorly improved their ability to build relationships with publishers. I mean, this is a significant drop off, and something we touched on in the report was that this might be because as the agencies who are using their own technology seek to get a bit of a better understanding of the ecosystem and how the pricing and sourcing of inventory works, there are benefits to them to getting to know publishers better. So the owning of their technology is kind of forcing them to get to know their publisher partners a little bit better. That's by no means the only factor that's benefiting tech owners. And we saw that the tech owners said that they are outperforming, well, they rate their performance as extremely strong across campaign measurement analytics, data activation, measuring the incremental impact of media buys, optimization and segmentation. And on the other hand, so the ones who weren't using their own technology were less likely to rate their performance in these areas as extremely strong. And something that our thought leaders touched on in the report, which you can have a read of in a second, was that this might be because those who are building out their own technology have the chance to see what their clients feel is most important when it comes to things like data activation, and actually tailor their technology to be able to fix those factors. So they've obviously picked out these as important factors and are building their technology around that. Moving on from the benefits, I think one of the other factors that is huge in the report is how agencies are differentiating from the competition, because it is getting more competitive out there. Kind of ironically, 54% of tech owners and 41% of non-tech owners say that they differentiate through understanding of the programmatic ecosystem, but if you all differentiate through understanding of the ecosystem, does anyone differentiate through understanding of the ecosystem? I don't think so. So something's kind of got to give here. And what we're actually seeing is that those who are still working with third parties are also looking to achieve media efficiencies as a way of differentiating. And I think that's kind of links back to what we were saying about the publishers. And because tech owners have forged a strong relationship with the publishers and that's given them a deeper understanding, those who are still working with third parties are moving away towards things like achieving media efficiencies as their way of standing out from the crowd. In terms of challenges over the next 12 months or so, I think, and the report shows, by quite a long way, transparency is still going to be probably the biggest issue in the industry, maybe not so much for those not exclusively using their own technology. And we went through this in the report and we thought that this is because when you're using your technology, you're up close and personal in the buying process, and you might get a look at some of the shadier sides of programmatic buying, and be able to see that perhaps the process isn't as transparent as it could be. Whereas when you're using a third party, you're slightly more removed from the process, so you're perhaps not as aware, which explains the drop-off of 78% to 45% between these two groups. And I think that's that one. I think even though 49% are using their own technology, that's still less than half, and that's worth noting that most of our respondents agencies across these areas are still using third parties, and this shows that the main reason that they haven't made this switch yet is cost. So cost of setup and cost of maintenance. Again, perhaps ironically though, the cost of setup and cost of maintenance are also the main reasons that those who have built their own technology use their own technology. So I think there's a bit of, there's lack of perhaps knowledge from those currently working with third parties that they might think the cost of maintenance and setup is higher than it actually is, and perhaps if they took that step they might find that it's a bit lower than they expected, which is why those using their own technology at the moment also say cost of setup and maintenance is a key factor to their decision. It's interesting to discuss, and I'm sure this is something that Lynn's going to touch on in the panel in a second, whether this is going to be the start of a shift, because issues such as transparency are obviously huge in the industry, and I think if working with your own technology gets you close to the issue and lets you solve it, then that's going to be a massive differentiating factor from your competition, and you can offer them complete transparency throughout the process. I think, as we've touched on, cost is going to be a stumbling block, but whenever it comes to a new investment and you're not 100% sure of the outcomes, I think cost is always going to be a stumbling block, and it might be the agencies who are currently working with third parties who take the risk and make the investment that see that the benefits might eventually actually outweigh the costs here.